Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. Today we're going to be ranking the top 10 strongest Bankai in Bleach. Yes, it's the big one. It's a list we've attempted before, so this will now be the most current and up-to-date version on the channel. What makes a strong Bankai? Is it simply raw power, broken abilities, limitless application, or a combination of all those factors and more? Who stands out among the Gotei 13, both past and present, as having the greatest Bankai of them all? Ranking them simply isn't going to be easy, and as always, I'm more than open to hearing your lists and opinions too. Of course, this is totally subjective. A little housekeeping first though before we get started. I won't be looking at any Bankai unique to the supplementary material this time, as it's going to take me a little longer to determine where the frankly strange Bankai of characters like Azashiro and Kurayashiki should end up. However, Bankai that appeared in the 1000-year Blood War arc anime will be included, as that all falls under the source material umbrella. As always though, we'll be starting with some honourable mentions too, as there are a lot of very powerful Bankai by the end of the 1000-year Blood War arc, and I wanted as many as possible to get their time in the spotlight today. So without further ado, let's get going on this list. If you're new here, we discuss Bleach and other series just like it every single week, so go ahead and hit subscribe if that sounds good to you. Right, without further ado, let's get going on this list, starting with honourable mention number 1. First up then, we have Renji's brand new Bankai, Sou Zabimaru. The fact that we are kickstarting our honourable mentions with a Bankai as explosively powerful as this should tell you everything you need to know about the calibre of what's still to come. After spending much of the series lumbered with an unwieldy and frankly useless Bankai in Hihio Zabimaru, Renji was granted something of a reprieve in the 1000-year Blood War arc thanks to his training in the Royal Palace. Discovering his Bankai's true name unlocked Renji's true strength as a result, lifting him to a higher plane. Sou Zabimaru massively condenses Renji's Bankai down, the once enormous serpentine bone whip now replaced by the combination of a colossal arm of a great ape, fragments of a glossy black armour, and a wicked blade emerging from the jaws of a snake, all of which Renji now wears draped over his shoulders. While we haven't yet seen Sou Zabimaru in action much, the Bankai delivered, despite its brief appearance, with Renji using the Bankai's fiery abilities to decimate Mask Demasculine in just a couple of moves, turning the Stern Ritter to ash. Up next, we have an interesting choice for the honourable mention slot, and one that I'm a little reticent to actually put here, as I feel it can deserve higher on any other day of the week. But amidst a sea of evolved and completed Bankai in the 1000-year Blood War arc, Byakuya's Senbonzakura Kageyoshi doesn't feel like it's changed all that much, and so in some ways it feels almost a little lacking in comparison to some of the other big hitters on the list to come. Sure, Byakuya himself has grown exponentially more powerful, and therefore so too has his Bankai as a result, with the captain using it to combat Goliath gods like Gerard Valkyrie by the end of the story. But when you look at the sheer craziness of the list still to come, it becomes difficult to really find a natural place for this Bankai anymore. Senbonzakura, and therefore by extension its Bankai, will always remain a paragon of the all-rounder Shinigami that Byakuya represents. But it also represents the somewhat humbler beginnings of the Bankai that we first saw in the Soul Society arc, growing beyond them, yes, but not quite scraping the summit of power any longer. I told you at the start of this video that this was going to be a difficult list to create, and truthfully all 3 of these honourable mentions were on that top 10 at one point or another. Our final honourable mention then is Mayuri's new and improved Bankai as of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo Matai Fuquin Shotai, which the mad scientist unveils in his battle against Pernida. Of the 3 honourable mentions here today, this was the last one that I dropped from the list, and like Byakuya's Bankai before it, I'm still ultimately not convinced by that decision. Mayuri's new Bankai is essentially a living plot device. Perfect for the captain who has an answer to almost everything, even in the most ridiculous of circumstances. Throughout the course of his battle, Mayuri feeds information to his Zanpakuto before activating his new Bankai, revealing a gigantic, grotesque, purple creature that takes on a twisted and monstrous Buddha-like form, a bulbous figure slouched languidly upon a wall of veiny tentacles. This being is then able to spawn the golden babies of Mayuri's previous Bankai, except now they are perfectly equipped to counter whatever Mayuri is currently facing at the time. This is extremely powerful, I don't need to tell you that, particularly in a world like Bleach's where hard counters often come into play and can even be the crux of fights. The problem that holds this Bankai back then is that we simply don't know enough about it. For example, just how many of these Jizo-like abominations can Mayuri create at any one time? And can he only register one particular counter at once, or could he run the gamut of every single ability that he's witnessed during a fight? I think this Bankai has enormous potential, but for now, I'm content with having it here. And so now we reach the true list, starting with number 10. And in 10th place we have Komamura's new Bankai Kokujo Tengenmyo Dangai-jo, the Empty Vessel. Komamura's Corpse Bankai is essentially exactly the same as his regular Bankai, which certainly wouldn't normally warrant it a place here. But with 2 key differences. Instead of being a proud warrior covered in a suit of armour, Dangai-jo sheds that armour, revealing the gaunt, emaciated being within. But more importantly than that, the Bankai goes hand in hand with Komamura's new humanization technique, which gives the captain complete immortality while in human form. And the same goes for his new Bankai too. Dangai-jo is completely indestructible, able to reform parts of its body that have been destroyed. And with Captain and Bankai linked so intrinsically here, since Komamura can't fall, neither can his Bankai. We see Bambietta bombard the Bankai with numerous explosions, going so far as to obliterate its hands, only for them to return to normal before our very eyes. To be honest, from what little we've seen, Kokujo Tengenmyo seems totally unbeatable. So why is it only 10th? Well, the truth is, Komamura's Bankai is hanging by a thread. The Bankai is tied to Komamura's life, and as we see in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, as soon as Komamura's intentions turn selfish in any way, he loses his human form. And his Bankai is instantly destroyed. It is a very delicate balance he's walking then, but regardless, Dangai-jo is absolutely deserving of a spot on the list for being an unstoppable monster, at least for as long as Komamura is standing. In 9th place, we have a new addition to our list, Shinji Hirako's Sakashima Yokoshima Happo Fusagari. First appearing in the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World, Shinji's Bankai made the jump to the source material thanks to its surprise appearance in the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. There, Shinji uses his Bankai to wipe out an entire squad of Soldat with ease, turning them against each other. Sakashima Yokoshima Happo Fusagari reverses perception, turning friends into foes and flipping allegiances on their head. Allies become vicious, brutal enemies, forced to fight to the death, with the soldat butchering each other while Shinji is encased in a large golden flower at the center of the devastation, keeping him from the influence of his own power. The anime even goes so far as to hint that Shinji's Bankai would have worked on the Bambis, as Shinji tries to goad Bambietta into calling her friends over during their short fight. Shinji's Bankai essentially does the dirty work for him, but what's crazy about it is its scope. It's a little situational, sure, and is only worth using if Shinji has no allies in the vicinity. But Shinji could theoretically use his Bankai to take out entire groups of villains at once. For example, if Shinji had used Bankai in the Fake Karakura Town arc, he could have potentially turned the top 3 Espada against each other, and maybe even the 3 traitorous captains. It's a crazy ability then that's held back ultimately by how dangerous it is. It's simply not that versatile when you can only use it in the tightest of situations. In 8th place, we have another Bankai that was elevated thanks to the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Hitsugaya's Daiguren Hyorinmaru, specifically the completed, mature version. For the longest time, we thought that the icy petals behind Hitsugaya's Bankai acted as a countdown to the Bankai's destruction. That when all the petals fell, Daiguren Hyorinmaru would be forcibly disengaged immediately. However, during his battle with Gerard Valkyrie, Hitsugaya reveals that they actually count down to the maturing of his Bankai, wherein his physical body is also aged to the point where Hyorinmaru believes he'll actually be able to wield this power normally. In this form, Hitsugaya has complete control over his abilities, able to freeze anything that comes into contact with him, or even just comes near him for that matter. For example, he's able to freeze Gerard's oncoming shield simply by holding out his hand, as well as the stream of air behind it. In fact, in this form, Hitsugaya can flash freeze even a giant like Gerard himself, wielding the full power of his element. But perhaps the craziest ability of Hitsugaya's completed Bankai is the power to negate power. Hitsugaya reveals that by freezing something with his Zanpakuto, he's able to nullify its abilities. When Hitsugaya casually cuts Gerard's Hoffnung in 2 with a single swipe, he too should have been mortally wounded thanks to the ability of Gerard's Holy Sword. But Hitsugaya merely notes that when frozen, all functionality ceases to exist, completely shutting down Gerard's weapon. It's an incredible power that's just the cherry on top of a suite of immense capabilities. The biggest current caveat is a simple one. It's not yet Hitsugaya's actual power. As the series barreled to the finish line, Kubo had one more surprise up his sleeve. The seemingly impossible reveal of Kenpachi's Bankai, which currently remains unnamed. But that's fitting for the monstrous demon that Kenpachi becomes upon activation. Having received the power of Bankai from Yachiru in a moment of crisis against Gerard, Kenpachi transforms in a blast of torrential power, his skin turning blood red as devilish horns sprout from his jagged visage. His Shikai, which was once ornate and massive, has been smashed into a representation that much of the man Kenpachi once was is now gone, swallowed up by an animalistic red mist. In his Bankai, Kenpachi demonstrates why he has the most raw physical strength of any Shinigami, with his attributes and capabilities amplified massively. By seemingly sacrificing his reason and his mind, Kenpachi gains extraordinary physical prowess, capable of ripping Gerard's gigantic arm clean off with just his teeth. Kubo cleverly showcases as well how fast Kenpachi is moving by having him dominate Gerard completely in the time it takes for the Quincy's arm to regenerate, which, as we see earlier, usually takes only a matter of seconds. But now, in that time, Kenpachi is slicing through Gerard's impenetrable shield and even clocking the behemoth in the chin, forcing him off the side of Varvelt itself with nothing but sheer strength. The reason then that this Bankai is here in 7th is twofold. Firstly, like I said, Kenpachi has to relinquish his mind in order to use this form, which feels like a slight step back, though turning Kenpachi into a raging berserker is again quite fitting. But secondly, and more importantly, is that we don't have a clue what this Bankai is truly capable of, as its sheer power ruptures Kenpachi's body. Simply put, the man wasn't yet ready to use Bankai, which makes sense considering he did only learn Shikai a few hours ago. Just missing out on the top 5 is one of the Bankai that is the hardest to place on this list. And in my last ranking, didn't make the list at all, which I admit was an oversight. But in 6th place we have Ichibe's Shirafude Ichimonji, a mysterious and ancient Bankai with the power to rewrite names. Ichibe's Bankai, which is so old that it actually predates the name Bankai, transforms his calligraphy brush slightly, replacing the brush head and blade with a stream of white ink that flows through the air, as a ring of similarly white light appears in the sky above Ichibei. Ichibei can then use this flowing white ink to write with, applying a new name to anything that he's previously robbed a name from. All power resides in names, and so Ichibei is able to bestow someone or something with completely new properties based on the name he gives them. For example, after robbing Yhwach of his name, Ichibei renames the Quincy King using his Bankai, instead calling him Black Ant, after which Yhwach becomes as weak and as powerless as an ant. Interestingly, these changed properties don't seem to extend to Yhwach's physical disposition, as he isn't instantly killed by Ichibei's follow-up attack. While this is in itself a godlike power, I've always felt that the true power behind Ichimonji is really found in its Shikai. If stripping someone or something of their name robs them of all power, then really Ichimonji's black ink is Ichibei's greatest asset. While we don't know for sure, Shirafude Ichimonji's power only seems to work on someone who has already had their name removed by Ichimonji. And even then, half the time I'm not entirely sure why you wouldn't just keep your enemy nameless. Ichibei's Bankai likely has positive applications though too, for usage in training and such, but we unfortunately don't get to see that. And so sadly then, a lot of what we can garner about Shirafude Ichimonji is still speculative, but it's clearly one of the most powerful Bankai in Bleach, with potentially limitless applications. If Ichibei can use the white ink of his Bankai on someone whose name is still intact and simply change it freely regardless, then I think this Bankai would become even more dangerous and continue to rise up the ranks. And so, as we reach the top 5, this is honestly where things become the trickiest. All 5 of these Bankai are absolutely insane in their own way, and I can't help but feel these placements could be swapped around endlessly. But in 5th place today, we have Kyoraku's Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju, a macabre theatre performance that tells a sorrowful tale. As Kyoraku battles a godly Leal, he activates his Bankai as a last-ditch resort, and a sinister web of black pine tree branches spreads from the shadows beneath the Captain Commander. Kyoraku's Bankai is one of the series' most abstract and weird, Fitting for one of the most enigmatic captains of them all. Against Leal, Kyoraku's Bankai takes both combatants through an inescapable play, telling the story of two lovers doomed to die. The first act of the play sees both fighters sharing their wounds, bringing them to a level playing field. Those injured by this act are then afflicted by the second act, a plague of bleeding boils that cover the body, rupturing the victim, causing blood to pour from every orifice. Afterwards, Kyoraku's Bankai flings both fighters into the sea, dragging them to the very depths of an endless abyss of water where their Reryoku then begins to deplete. The ice-cold water shakes them to their core, removing their resolve in one fell swoop as Katen herself appears behind Kyoraku. The final act of the play sees the completion of the story, and seemingly guaranteed death, as Kyoraku wraps a white thread around his opponent's neck, severing their head from their body in a violent burst as their throat is cut. This Bankai has a tendency, I feel, to be downplayed somewhat. I think firstly due to the more conceptual nature of its power making it a little harder to understand, but also due to the fact that it failed to kill Leal. But really, almost every Bankai on this list would fail to kill him. It's not a particularly fair point of contention, in my opinion at least. What's perhaps most incredible about this Bankai, however, is the fact that it takes the idea of the Shikai's power to turn children's games into reality, and instead focuses on a more adult form of entertainment, putting on an elaborate theatre production that dives headfirst into some truly dark and morbid themes. And of course, much in the same way as Katen Kyokotsu Shikai has access to numerous games, it's likely the play we see being performed here is just one of many available to Kyoraku, entirely dependent on the circumstances. Now in fourth place, just missing out on that coveted top 3, we have Kisuke Urahara's Kanon Biraki Benehime Aratame, perhaps the single most versatile Bankai in the entire series. Upon activation of his Bankai, Urahara summons an enormous doll in the shape of Benehime herself, presumably, the wooden puppet-like figure looming over him, her arms outstretched on either side of the Shinigami in some kind of an embrace. Cloaked in a blood-red garb, Benehime is a striking figure. But it's her ability that makes her truly dangerous. I always say that a soul ability acting as the branching nexus for other powers is often the key to a truly powerful character in Bleach, and that's exactly what Kisuke has going for him here. Kanon Biraki Benehime Aratame simply has the ability to restructure anything it touches. Although Kisuke doesn't get to use his Bankai for very long, Kubo makes sure to show us that this thing is capable of, well, just about anything. And I really mean that. Kisuke's eyes, which were totally killed by Askin's gift ring, are completely repaired thanks to Benehime, who simply places her hands over Kisuke's face as she stitches him back together again. Later, we see Kisuke is capable of augmenting his own physical strength on the fly, as his arm is opened up and stitched back together again in a matter of seconds, suddenly allowing him to overpower Askin in a battle of raw strength, sending the Schutzstaffel member flying across the battlefield, all because Kisuke's Bankai restructured his arm to make it stronger. Kisuke's Bankai can also be used for traversal. We see that he's created and is maintaining an opening in Askin's barrier from very far away, and even rips open a portal in the floor for Grimjo to move through, the Espada leaping out of the ground behind Askin to deal him the fatal blow. The fact is that Kisuke's Bankai allows him to do anything he wants, the perfect ability for the man who prepares for every single eventuality. And really, where does it end? Presumably, Kisuke can restructure his legs to enable him to run faster and jump higher, or perhaps he can restructure his very skin, making it resistant to injury. Kisuke splits Askin's arm completely open from afar, revealing that neither he nor Benahime need to actually interact with his opponent for it to work, and he restructures the city around him to allow Grimmjow in even while fighting Askin. And so we see that Kisuke can freely restructure, freely remake the world around him, both the landscape and even his enemy's own ability, rendering it useless before Kisuke's power. For a man who often plays God, a Bankai that turns everyone and everything into his own plaything is very apt and truly scary. Maybe I'm a little biased. This is one of my favourite Bankai in Bleach, perhaps my absolute favourite, but I really do think it deserves this spot. In fact, I was a little tempted to put it higher. It's devious, and while it does technically have just the one ability, that ability is, well, limitless. Alright, moving on, and in third place, we have our only anime-exclusive Bankai to make the list. Senjumaru's Shatatsu Karagara Shigarami no Tsuji, a truly divine Bankai whose activation shakes the very foundations of the Bleach universe. Once the other members of the Zero Division are dead and the Blood Oath seal is lifted, Senjumaru is free to activate her all-powerful Bankai, conjuring a gigantic loom from which a prison of red fabric is woven. Senjumaru entraps her opponents within this fabric world, which essentially acts as a new reality unto itself. From there, she's able to move freely through it as an illusory presence, sealing and defeating numerous incredibly powerful enemies all at once. For you see, Senjumaru weaves bespoke tapestries that overcome each individual enemy, while she herself remains untouched. The tapestries are seemingly a representation of fate itself, as each member of Yhwach's Schutzstaffel is bested in such a way that hints at their future demise. Recent revelations by Kubo himself and the anime team explored the Bankai even further, revealing that what Senjumaru is doing within this fabric realm is indeed very real. She's warping reality itself to imprison her enemies, and is successful in defeating the 6 most powerful Quincy's of the Vandenreich in one fell swoop. Not including Yhwach himself, of course. Now, this is a bit of a nebulous one, however. At the time of writing, we know that the Schutzstaffel will in fact escape her Bankai unharmed, we just don't yet know how. Is there some glaring weakness to Shatatsu Karagara Shigarami no Tsuji that we're not currently aware of? Either way, there's no doubt that Kubo and the team went all out for Senjumaru's Bankai, giving her a power truly befitting that of a royal defender, and I'm more than happy to see her securing the bronze spot here on this list. Now, for the second place spot, I'm once again unsure. This Bankai is mostly frustratingly unproven, but that also means we don't know what it's truly capable of. Weirdly, this is a Bankai that makes it this high on the list partially due to hearsay and conjecture. And, well, it's Ichigo's true Tensa Zangetsu. Of course, this Bankai's showing is nothing if not unconventional. Ichigo attempts to release his true Bankai against Yhwach, but the now Soul King-infused leader of the Quincy's breaks it in two before Ichigo can use it, citing the Bankai's incredible power. But right there, that tells you so much. If even Yhwach, the strongest and most broken character in the series, feared facing Tensa Zangetsu in battle enough to reach into the future and destroy it, then it must be something special. Luckily, all is not lost. We do see a little of the true Tensor Zangetsu in action. Once the blade is restored, thanks to the combined efforts of Orihime and Tsukishima, Ichigo stabs Yuha Bark through the back and cleaves him in two with a gargantuan, earth-splitting Getsuga Tensho, killing the Soul King in a single stroke. Again, it is difficult to contextualize, but right there Ichigo finishes off Yuha Bark, the same Yuha Bark who is currently wielding the power of God himself, in just one slash. The true Tensor Zangetsu then is strong enough to kill God, and to do so with just a single attack is breathtaking. Yuha Bark notes that he did in fact die too, as he resurrects himself in the future by rewriting what just happened as a show of what the Almighty is capable of. So, while Yuha Bark remains the most busted character in the entire series, Ichigo has perhaps the single mightiest weapon in all of Bleach in his grasp. But sadly though, there really isn't much to go on here. The true Tensor Zangetsu is witnessed for but a fleeting moment. Despite that, it feels wrong to me to rank it lower than this, considering what Ichigo does achieve with it when actually given the chance. Yuha Bark's body is completely ripped in two thanks to this massive wave of a torrential Getsuga, and so here's hoping we get to see a bit more of this power in the future to help it continue to prove itself. However, taking the top spot on my list is the same Bankai that I awarded it to last time. In my opinion, this Bankai is completely all-engrossing, designed to be effectively unbeatable. Sure, there might be some circumstances where we could engineer its downfall through potentially contrived means, but on the surface, Yamamoto's Zanka no Tachi truly does have it all. Upon the activation of his Bankai, Yamamoto is cloaked with the very power of the sun itself, with a strength so great, merely leaving his Bankai active for too long threatens to destroy the entire Soul Society. The raw, immediate effect of the Bankai's activation is enough to completely shut down other elemental Bankai like Daigoren Hyorin-maru, while Yamamoto effectively becomes the master of all things. The edge of his blade carries the weight of all of his condensed flames, and with a single tap of the sword, it's now enough to annihilate huge swaths of land from existence in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, Yamamoto himself is shrouded in a robe of billowing flame that's strong enough to erase anything that comes into contact with it, providing the former head captain with the ultimate defensive shield. If that was everything the Bankai could do, then sure, it would be extremely powerful if unspectacular. But it isn't. By driving his scorching hot blade into the earth, Yamamoto can quite literally wake the dead, raising an army of charred skeletons to do his bidding, each one a previous victim of Ryujin Jaka's all-devouring flame. We see these skeletons swarming the fake Yuha Bark, and yes, on that note, Yamamoto completely walks all over a Yuha Bark at 80% of his full power, with the fake Quincy King unable to even land a hit. Hell, who am I kidding? He's unable to even really get near Yamamoto before being reduced to ash. And finally, Yamamoto can conjure an enormous explosive wave of flame for one final statement attack, producing enough power to kill the fake Yuha Bark outright, again wiping his physical body from the face of the earth. It's an incredible suite of abilities that all coalesces into one unstoppable package. For me, I look back at this list of frankly awe-inspiring Bankai and wonder how each of them would fare against Yamamoto's hellscape. There are characters that I'm ultimately less certain of. Senjumaru, for example. Could Yamamoto's Bankai simply incinerate her fabrics even before they get the chance to do anything, or does it not quite work like that? Considering how characters like Lil Barrow try to fight back unsuccessfully, I do have to wonder. And then there are the other more abstract Bankai, like Kyoraku's for example. Were he to successfully ensnare Yamamoto in a story, would there realistically be anything the former head captain could do about it? Or would he be on the pathway to guaranteed death? How would Kenpachi's limitless might fare against the impossible flames of Zanka no Tachi? There are so many questions, and yet I feel confident in placing Yamamoto's Bankai at the top spot. It really is just that impressive, and in my mind, it is hard to imagine any standing before the fiery tempest that is Zanka no Tachi and leaving with their life. Alright everyone, but that's it for the list, my top 10 strongest Bankai in Bleach as of 2024, with a few honourable mentions to boot. Let me know in the comments, do you agree with my list at all, or is yours totally different? If it is, that's absolutely fine. I'd love to know what it is down below. These kind of lists can always get a little heated, but as always, I'm very open to seeing your answers as well, and to seeing where you feel I might be mistaken, or where you might agree with me. As always though, I really do hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you got something out of it as well. And I want to end the video, as always, by giving a massive shout out and saying a huge thank you to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without whom I really couldn't do this, so I do appreciate you all so very much. And if you like what I do here over on YouTube and you want to support the channel for as little as $1 a month, and you'll get your name in the credits just like this, as a supporter of the channel. And for as little as $2 a month, you can receive every single video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then. I'm still not used to this yet.